Good. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Strategy Show, Tournament Strategy Edition. Take a look through the Sims today. Man, I'm tired staying up for that overtime game.
Good one.
What a nutty game that was. Really, like 44-point total, ends up cruising over that, goes to overtime. Hodge catches a touchdown, and the only reason he's out there is due to injury. I mean, it was nuts. Kirk Cousins threw for 509 yards. Jacoby Brissett has thrown for 526 yards on the season. Just what a crazy game all around, man.
Yeah, it was a super high scoring game, and I can't believe the Buccaneers didn't win. Like they were in cruise control like the entire game. They're running the clock out with less than 2 minutes left. And also they're on the Falcons 15-yard line. Bucky Irving has the fumble. Falcons get the ball back. Younghoe Koo, second week in a row, makes a clutch field goal as time expires. I don't know what the win probability was for the Buccaneers at the point in time of the fumble. They had to be like 98% likely to win or something.
Yeah, well, you know what happened too is I don't know why the broadcast team wasn't talking about this more, but they were squarely in field goal position before they started losing yards and taking penalties. And there was like nobody that talked about that. They're just like, oh, okay, here we go. You know, it's third and 24 or whatever it was. What were they at the 30? I think they were at the 30-yard line or something.
I think it was even inside of that.
Might have been, which is crazy too. Something to keep in mind going forward. Todd Bowles brought Bucky Irving right back out there. Yeah. I wasn't sure that was going to be the case, but after he fumbled, he came back out. So, yeah, I don't know. What a strange game that was. Did you see what the winning lineups looked like?
Yeah, it ended up with both of the kickers, which was not the case towards the later stage of the game. By the way, because I just pulled up the box score because I was curious. They were on the 28-yard line.
Is where 28, right. I said 30. So close enough, yeah. Jake DeWitt, what's up, Jake? Take away Rachaad White's 58-yard run, and he rushed 9 times for 14 yards, 3 receptions for -6. I know. Listen, you're preaching to the choir, brother. You don't have to
say this, though. It's not really fair to say take away his best play. It's still relevant. But either way, I mean, they went to Bucky Irving at the very end.
Sure, it's relevant because it happened. You know, it definitely happened. But on like a run-for-run basis, Bucky Irving looked better. And then he fumbled, which is crazy too, because if he didn't fumble there, he had a hole.
The game was also over if he didn't fumble. Also, you know what was actually the way more ridiculous part of the game? Tyler Algier was getting all of the run at the end of the game over Bijan Robinson. Tyler Algier had 6 carries for 12 yards. Robinson had 12 carries for 61 yards. So Bijan was averaging over 5 yards per carry, and Tyler Algier couldn't get anything going on the ground. And they were still going to Algier at the end of the game over Bijan, which was very odd.
They started overtime with him. And then who got hurt? I can't even remember now. Was it Mooney that got hurt?
London got hurt twice. He had a massive game, but London, yeah, he had the concussion scare that you and I were talking about after the show last night, and then he got the rib roaster that led to Kadero.
That's what it was. Yeah.
I haven't seen any updates on him, but he got hit hard to the ribs.
I'll tell you what, though, he was out there post game talking no problem. Like he seemed fine in the interview process. Mooney didn't get hurt. Mooney had that bad drop, is what it was. Mooney had a bad drop, but
really bad.
Anyway, happy to have you guys with us. We're talking tournament strategy. We're using the Sims. If you're new to this show, it will help you because we're doing the legwork for you, whether you're a subscriber or not. If you're a sub, you can go ahead and do much of that yourself. But even so, I think it's a process that's super helpful when you consider that we're running the Sims here, looking at what lineup builds, are simming out the best right now. Again, is it, mega stacks? Is it big game stacks? Is it 2 tight ends? Is it this or that? A lot of different ways that are going to play into our favor, just understanding what type of builds look the best. Also, how do our exposures look? What do the stacks look like? Where's most of our stack exposure coming from? So all of that in the next, say, 50 minutes or so. So as always, before we dive in, if you don't mind, take a second, atone for your sins, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, help us get, again, like I said, shut me up. Once we get to 100K, you'll never hear from me again, at least not for that. And we're pretty close. Let's see what we're at right now.
We're like 190 away or something, I think.
Is that what it is?
Could have changed.
I mean, either way, we're close. We are less than 200.
Yes.
All right. So let's get there. And you guys can help us. I'm hoping by Sunday we can get it done. All right. I suppose it's time to talk a little bit of football. We ran the Sims, large field. Things will look different if you're running for smaller fields, obviously. So keep that in mind. Or if you're going 10% to first or however you want to do it, 30% to first. Let's dive in. First thing we always do, let's just take a first glance at the lineups because I haven't run it yet for Sunday, Greg. I don't know if you have.
I did a little bit just because I was recording some content earlier. So I have more of a sense than I normally do about where the Sims are going to go, but also nothing like overly surprising that we were getting to either. But let's see what these individual lineups are looking like.
Also, for what it's worth, it's still Friday. We still have more practice reports to work through as the week goes on. Doesn't look like we're going to see Brian Robinson this week, and he is showing up in some lineups.
Yeah, I think he's like fair to still be considered a possibility to play. If he's out, then going to kind of be the inverse situation what we had last week. I think Austin Eckler would end up becoming really popular. I'm not like 100% convinced that Robinson doesn't play. If he doesn't practice today, then I'd feel a lot stronger that he's not going to be out there. But right now, I don't think it's like impossible that he ends up going. But the one who definitely looks like he's not going to play and that we do have out of our projections is Jonathan Taylor, which is making Trey Sermon pop up in a bunch of lineups.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Jonathan Taylor plays. When you're a running back though dealing with a knee issue and you're Brian Robinson, I think it more likely than not that he doesn't play either. But we'll see. Like you said, we don't know quite yet. Just letting you guys know that we still have him in the projections. By the way, we're 158, Greg, away from 100K. 158 is where we're at. All right, so wow. Oh man, music to my ears. Deshaun Watson. This should be good. Look, Deshaun Watson is one of those guys that's going to drive you nuts. It's going to make you sick. But against the Commanders this week, I have interest. I also think this could be a letdown spot for the Commanders. One way or another, though, it doesn't really matter. If the Commanders come out and they just slaughter this Cleveland defense like they've done recently to a number of opponents, Cincinnati being one of them, and then last week, who was it? Who was it last week?
I don't blanking. I don't remember.
I'm drawing a blank as well, but besides the point, because it doesn't really matter. Who was? No, it does matter. Who was it? Who was it? Arizona.
Right. Yeah,
Arizona. Right. I had to think of that. It would have driven me insane the whole show. Last week against Arizona, not exactly tough matchups. This one's not nearly as easy, even though Cleveland hasn't been good. I just want to throw this out there because this to me is a big deal. And, it's not factored into, I don't think, anything yet, but the offensive line for the Browns, they got Jack Conklin back for a limited practice and Jedrick Wills back for a limited practice. They got their starting center back as well. If those guys are active this week, I think that makes a monumental difference for Deshaun Watson because he's been getting killed behind the line, pressured at a huge, like a 45% clip or something on dropbacks this year. So it might not be baked into anything yet. All I'm saying is if Deshaun Watson gets some of those reinforcements back on the offensive line, to me, that's a huge deal. And I'd be far more willing to play him against this secondary. If all three of those guys remain out, then I'm probably bumping him down a little bit because he has no time to throw the football.
Yeah, pretty easily been a bottom 5 offensive line in the NFL this year, the Cleveland Browns. But like you said, they have dealt with injuries. Also, I mean, for me, there's a little bit of like a funny just circumstance around this because last night I was spending time arguing with Browns fans about whether Baker Mayfield or Deshaun Watson is a better quarterback. And obviously, I'm a logical person. I believe that as of right now, Baker Mayfield is better. But Browns fans still like pretty heavily backing Deshaun Watson. And now I'm going to have to come on here and say that Deshaun Watson looks like a good DFS option for this weekend slate.
Wait, hold on. Browns fans are backing Watson over Mayfield?
Browns fans do not like Baker Mayfield.
I understand that, but are you just taking like 3 morons you saw on Twitter?
Sort of. But like if you look at just general, like if you search Baker Mayfield on Twitter and just look at some of the Browns fan stuff around Baker Mayfield, they'll say that Baker Mayfield has a lot of help around him. He had a lot of help in Cleveland. He just sucked. And they'll say he was bad in Carolina. He was bad with the Rams. And I don't know, Browns fans just in general seem to be very bitter about the quarterback situation.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They're probably bitter, but maybe it's a Kevin Stefanski problem. And I like Kevin Stefanski. Baker Mayfield looks awesome this year.
Yeah. I mean, I know his passing numbers weren't insane yesterday, but part of it was because they were up by so much the entire game. They didn't really have to throw, but like he was mobile, he was running a lot. And then, I mean, his passer rating was like near perfect yesterday.
I thought he looked good.
Yeah, he's been one of the best quarterbacks in the league this year. The caveat being is that quarterback is kind of weak on depth this year compared to other years. Like there's the Mahomes, Allen, Lamar Jackson tier of quarterbacks. But like Baker Mayfield's been in the next tier with like the Sam Darnold type guys.
He has. Clayton Eskew, what's up, brother? Said, I'm getting Trey Sermon shoved up my ass on every sim. So
yeah,
that's good. Yeah, we're going to talk about that for sure because you're going to have a lot of Trey Sermon if Jonathan Taylor's out. But you look at this, Greg, you see Watson +2, Watson +2. That's, who is it? Amari and Judy. And then is it Amari and Judy again? Yeah, Amari and Judy again. It's not crazy. Joe Burrow is another one of these guys where you're getting him +2. I have no issues with that. Oh, would you look at this? Would you look at number 4, Bo Nix with Courtland Sutton? Woo!
I mean, double stat. Oh, never. It's Javonte Williams in the other spot, so it's not like 2 pass catchers.
Somebody cool me down.
Me on 2 skill position players with Bo Nix. But yeah, if you're going to play Bo Nix, then yeah, it's pretty clear. You and I went over this Wednesday. The guy you'd want to pair him with is Courtland Sutton. He didn't throw the ball to anybody else.
Yeah, because the guy said I was meat riding Courtland Sutton. Yeah, I get it. And then I went over on Tails and wrote up like an essay on why I like him this week as well on his overs. But yeah, so, okay, let's check this lineup out actually, right? Because if we have Bo Nix, Courtland Sutton, and I haven't looked at the other players yet, and Javonte Williams and presumably Trey Sermon, who are we jamming?
Well, let's see. Nico Collins, George Kittle.
Jordan Mason.
Somehow it's not even a lineup that has
studs. I know.
Well, I guess Jordan Mason's expensive now. We kind of just have to consider Jordan Mason a stud at this point. I know on paper we still think of him, or at least I do, as still like this value running back. I guess we have to just consider him a stud for DFS purposes now, though.
Without question. But I guess what I'm saying is I thought we would have had more studs in that lineup. But I guess it's because we don't have anyone that's 3K. It's not like you have any dirt cheap options. You know, Whittington's mid-4, upper 4K, George Kittle. It's an interesting lineup. I'll tell you this much. There's no way, and not that these lineups ever get duped, but there's 0 chance, even with 1 million entries, that lineup is getting duped.
Out of curiosity, Jacob, just because it is a 10-game slate, could you sort by the dupes column? I'm curious if there are any lineups that are really heavily duped. 1. That's what? Brock Purdy, Javonte Williams, Trey Sermon, Jaden Reed, Wan'Dale Robinson, Jordan Whittington, George Kittle, Kyren Williams, Broncos defense. All right, yeah, like those are some of the most chalk players on the slate, and they all fit into a lineup together. So I could see how that one individual lineup could end up being really heavily duped. Other than that, though, it's not something I usually think about all that much for large slates.
Anything else stand out to you here?
Pretty good mix, it looks like, of our top lineups. Couple of Cleveland lineups, and there's a Cincinnati, Denver, San Francisco, Green Bay, Baltimore, Chicago, Houston. It's a really wide array of different stacks we're getting to towards the top, which makes me think that there isn't one quarterback who's showing up in an overwhelming amount of lineups.
All right. Well, now I'm just very, very curious. Let's go to exposures and look at stack exposures. Where is Jordan Love? Okay, only 5% Jordan Love.
And almost all double and triple stack. Well, all double and triple stacks, no single stacks.
What do you mean?
Jordan Love.
Just for Jordan Love. Yeah.
No single stacks.
Which actually, to me, makes a lot of sense. I wouldn't want Jordan Love with a single stack.
Yeah.
Plus you have a lot of these discounted receivers with Christian Watson not playing. So, and cheap Tucker Kraft, all of that's going to open some things up. Geno Smith, look at that against the Giants. That is what we must be getting massive leverage on Geno Smith.
A little bit. There's 3 quarterbacks that are expected to be pulling ownership this week, and it's Jordan Love, Geno Smith, and Brock Purdy. So I think we're a little bit overweight to Geno Smith, but it's not like insanely so because he's pulling double-digit ownership.
Is he going to be that popular?
Looks like it. I mean, he's reasonably priced. Then what are the prices also of some of his pass catchers? Metcalf is $7K. All right, so that's somewhat pricey, nothing crazy. Lockett's only $5,200. I wonder who else we're pairing him with.
Probably, I bet it's Kenneth Walker. Because you have JSN, you have JSN, you have Lockett, you have Metcalf. It's probably Kenneth Walker.
Could be.
Can we go to lineups,
Definitely.
Jacob, and go to lineups, and then on the right side, where it's lineups, let's filter by Geno Smith.
Yeah, you just type in Geno.
Metcalf, Smith, and Jigba, Kenneth Walker, and who is it? Kenneth Walker and Metcalf. Metcalf, Smith, and Jigba, Lockett. Smith and Jigba, Metcalf, Kenneth Walker. So yeah, you're definitely going to see some of those spots where Kenneth Walker's in there with some of these stacks. How do you feel about that? If it's like a QB +2 and it's Geno plus Metcalf and Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, I've been doing some reading on and seeing what some of the optimal lineups look like, just based on like articles I found or looking at some of our post-contest sims as well. And actually, for double stacks, the ones that over time have been most successful, it's quarterback with the wide receiver 1 and the running back. That shows up to be a more frequently optimal lineup than a quarterback with the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2, or the quarterback with the wide receiver 1 and the tight end. Running backs end up being in those lineups more often than not. And sometimes it doesn't even necessarily have to be a pass catching running back, which I thought would have been the case, except I guess what ends up happening is if a team puts up a lot of points and they're moving the ball a lot and just creates a lot of scoring opportunities, even if the quarterback isn't the one who's converting on the touchdowns, the reason there ends up being a little bit of a positive correlation, more upside in some of those lineups, is just because if the team is moving the football and scoring touchdowns, it does often end up being the number 1 running back who scores those touchdowns. So as a result, there ends up being more upside correlation, even if the individual positions don't even correlate all that well.
A lot of comments about Trey Sermon, which I understand. Jake said Sermon isn't exactly cheap and hasn't demonstrated the ability to handle the full workload. I'll be capping that exposure. Brandon Smith, is Trey Sermon any good, or is this a money save move only? Okay, so I guess it's pretty good time to talk about this, assuming he starts. And this is where it gets weird with Trey Sermon, Greg. So last year, and I'm not saying you can necessarily use Zach Moss as a proxy, but if you were to do so, that you would see that Zach Moss got essentially all of the work. He basically took Jonathan Taylor's workload. Zach Moss did. Zach Moss is better than Trey Sermon. I'm not suggesting he isn't. Here's the thing. When Taylor went out in that fourth quarter, Trey Sermon came in and played every snap. Tyler Goodson did not play. Trey Sermon got all of the touches. Also, Goodson on the season does not have a single carry. He has one target, one reception for 2 yards in week 2. He was a healthy and active in week 1, did not touch the ball in week 4, did not touch the ball in week 3, did not have a single carry in week 2. Meanwhile, Trey Sermon has been the clear backup running back. So if you're just looking this based on what they did last year, not even giving Trey Sermon the Zach Moss workload, without Jonathan Taylor, but just saying that as the clear backup this year, and as the guy that, remember, Shane Steichen won't admit it, but he basically benched Jonathan Taylor in week, was it week 2 or week 3 when he fumbled, right? I think that was week 2 or week 3, whatever it was, doesn't matter. And they asked him, he's like, we just wanted to get Sermon some work. Sermon started getting a ton of opportunities in that game, played a lot more snaps, 32%, only 52% to Taylor. So there is really an element of, hey, with this possibly being a game Jonathan Taylor misses, do you really expect Tyler Goodson to get a lot of work? And I think kind of the prevailing sentiment here is no, Trey Sermon should play most of the snaps.
Yeah, and to your point, I just pulled up Zach Moss's game log from last year where, if I remember correctly, because Jonathan Taylor he had the contract negotiation issue with the Colts, and then he was also injured for a little bit at one point. Like, there was all kinds of issues at the start of the year with Jonathan Taylor last year. So they just started Zach Moss. And to your point, he took on the exact same role Jonathan Taylor did. If I'm not mistaken, he was the leading rusher in the NFL through 4 weeks last year.
Yeah.
Here's what Zach Moss's numbers looked like. First week of the year, 18 carries for 88 yards. Second week of the season, 30 carries for 122 yards. Week 3, 18 carries for 70 yards. Week 4, 23 carries for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then he was also averaging like 2.5 targets per game or something like that at the start of the year as well. So not a massive pass catching role, but he was involved in the passing game. And then while also averaging over 20 carries per game. So is Trey Sermon good? No, probably not, but it's not like Zach Moss is great either. But if you're a cheap running back, he's $5,700 on DraftKings. He's really cheap on FanDuel as well, who we could pretty reliably expect to have 20 plus touches. All he has to do, if he's averaging 3.5, 4 yards per carry with opportunities for a touchdown, with also a couple of targets, it's not hard to expect like, oh, this guy is going to be expected to score fantasy points in like the mid-teens.
Right. Do I hate the idea, Jake, of capping exposure? Like, okay, Jacob, go to exposure. My guess is that our highest owned player is Trey Sermon.
Yeah.
Without question. Right. Am I opposed to limiting exposure at 5,700? No, I'm not. I'm really not, but I also understand why he's projecting well. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. It's also not a bad matchup against Jacksonville. Some good points from chat as well. And I had mentioned this on a video over on the betting channel the other day. Yeah, if Joe Flacco plays, that's only going to be better for Trey Sermon. If Anthony Richardson plays, I'd be a little bit more hesitant to load up on Sermon. But if it's Joe Flacco, who is not a mobile quarterback, there's a good chance that you see a lot of opportunity for Sermon. So yeah, a big spot to pay attention to going into this week.
And then another part of this too, just because Conscious in the YouTube chat brought it up, he said Sermon or Eckler. Right now, we are still projecting Robinson in, but if Robinson ends up sitting, Sermon's ownership projection and his amount of exposure we get to in the Sims is going to come down just because Eckler is going to open up as another really good value option. Then Trey Sermon probably ends up being in like closer to half of our lineups because Austin Eckler would also be in that amount.
It would still be, by the way, it would still be Trey Sermon over Eckler for me.
What's Eckler's price point, by the way?
Same price.
Is it?
56.
Yeah. I could almost guarantee, though, they'd be the 2 running backs that show up the most in the Sims if Robinson's out.
Probably. I wouldn't be opposed to Austin Eckler. Don't get me wrong. But you do wonder if Brian Robinson's out, is the goal line back Jeremy McNichols?
Could be. He played a decent role last week. He got more touches than I thought he was going to.
Scored 2 touchdowns. I know they were up by a decent margin, but he was good. Everyone was steamrolling Arizona, but McNichols was good. It does make you wonder, would there be a because I have trouble believing that if Flacco is in and Jonathan Taylor's out. So if Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor are out and Joe Flacco starts, that you're not getting goal, like the Trey Sermon's not your goal line back.
Yeah. I mean, just based on how we've seen them play with Jonathan Taylor out in the past, they just plug somebody else into that same role. So
right.
Whatever role we've been projected for Jonathan Taylor, you've been expecting from him, that's the role Trey Sermon plays. Not with the same efficiency, obviously, but that's the role he's likely to play. And
again, I don't know if it's a 1-for-1 for like Zach Moss last year, but even if it's 15 carries in this matchup and 70% of snaps for a guy at that price against Jacksonville, it's pretty good. Can you go to quarterbacks for a second, Jacob? I just want to see, you don't have to go to stacks, but let's just go. Okay. So here's our actual exposures to quarterbacks, Greg. Purdy, Geno, Watson up top. And this will change a little bit throughout the week, especially as injury news rolls in. Burrow, Jones, Williams, Love. It's just really flat after those 3 guys. Really flat.
Also skewing towards cheaper quarterbacks. The first expensive quarterback we get is Lamar at 7,500, and he's only in 5% of lineups. Project for 8% ownership. It's like a little bit underweight to the field on him. Nothing crazy, but yeah, definitely skewing towards the cheaper QBs this week.
Yeah. Jordan Love's in a spot that I like quite a bit. We're only getting 5%, but that is a really tempting spot against that Rams pass defense.
Yeah, he looks like he's going to be pretty popular, Jordan Love, right around 11% projected ownership.
Yeah.
But that's nothing crazy.
It's not. Also, as much as you love a player in a spot, it does, there's just so far from guaranteed to win a tournament. Like Geno's in a great spot. He has looked good as well. The only issue I have about that game is, do they just play more conservative football with Malik Neighbors not expected to play?
I mean, they already play pretty conservative on offense because Daniel Jones is incapable of throwing the ball more than.
No, I mean, do the Seahawks play more conservative and they go up early at home? Is what are they now? They're probably 7-point favorites.
Current line, pulling it up. We've got Seattle favored by 6.5. Yeah.
Okay. 6.5. All right. Which is interesting because that's where it's been. That's where it's been. I guess in the Neighbors news was not to say that like a skill position player should move the line, but somebody like Malik Neighbors I thought might move it a point or so. Anyway.
But one thing I'll add to that, though, is there was probably an expectation he wouldn't play. Because
that's what I'm saying. It was it had to have been baked in, yeah. But it was weird, Greg, because it was the last Thursday game, so he has that additional time, but still doesn't appear that he's going to be there. Yeah. Let's talk running backs here for a second, unless there's any other quarterbacks you wanted to mention in this.
No, I mean, it's pretty spread out. There isn't like one quarterback I look at and is like, oh, that is the guy I want to be rostering this week. We are getting to a lot of Brock Purdy here. Personally, I'd probably dial that back a little bit if I was entering my lineups right now. I wouldn't want 23% of Purdy and then maybe divvy that up and you get to a little bit more of like Jordan Love, maybe a little bit more of Lamar Jackson. But yeah, quarterback, I don't have any super strong takes or anything like that. So we can move to running back.
Well, here's what's piqued my interest is if we have 23% Purdy, how much Mason do we have?
About even with the field, 34%.
35. A lot of Kyron, Javonte Williams. That's a guy I mentioned to Ben on Tuesday before we had ownership. And the reason I had mentioned it wasn't because I'm really high on this offense or really high on Javonte Williams, but there's not a lot of value at all this week. Like even Trey Sermon was preemptively priced up with that injury, right? Like normally Trey Sermon would be a lot cheaper than that. He's not a $5,700 backup running back, but now you've got him at 57. So yeah, he's a discount, but he's not really that cheap. There's just, there are not a lot of cheap running backs this week that are worth getting to at all.
You have me curious. I'm looking at Sermon. Yeah, you're right. Sermon has been priced at first 4 weeks of the year, 4,500, 4,500, 4,300, 4,500. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it looks like with Jonathan Taylor getting banged up last week, immediately they went in, they priced him up at least a little bit. Like he's still the best, I would consider the best overall points per dollar play on the slate. But yeah, if he was still at that 43 or $4,500 price tag, I don't think there'd be any pushback about having him in the amount of lineups we do.
No issues at all. Javonte Williams, 5,200 against the Raiders. I'm wondering, because the Raiders are holding an 8-game win streak over the Denver Broncos. I'm wondering if dysfunction is creeping into that locker room. I know they got the win last week. I know. I get it. The week before that, they got blown out. We don't know if Max Crosby is going to play. Devontae Adams is not expected to play. Javonte Williams, do you like him? Do you not like him? Are you willing to get that much exposure to a guy who, is technically the lead back, but isn't exactly a workhorse in this offense?
I feel like anytime I've played Javonte Williams, it hasn't gone well, which is because he hasn't had very many big games over the course of his career. He's been massively inefficient, always running the football. I mean, he only averaged 3.6 yards per carry last year. So you'll see people be like, oh, why does Javonte Williams not get more touches? He hasn't really earned more touches. But the matchup, like you mentioned, against the Raiders, it's certainly one that could be really appealing. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with this amount of Javonte Williams. I think he's a good value back at 5,200, but I probably want closer to like 20% of him than having him in half of my lineups.
Yeah, I'm not interested in half of my lineups. That's a manual adjustment that you and I clearly agree on. We have Brian Robinson at 19%. If he plays, fine. If he doesn't play, you'll see Eckler come up. You'll see a few other guys because he's 6,600 come up as well. 10% Josh Jacobs. I like Josh Jacobs this week. I don't like the fact that Emmanuel Wilson is getting opportunities, but that's a game that could really go into shootout mode and a spot that I would like to get a decent amount of on all fronts, including the other side with Kyren and Jordan Whittington and probably even Kobe Parkinson.
Yeah. I mean, part of the appeal of Parkinson, too, is that he's a cheap tight end that we could expect to get targets, and tight end has just been garbage this year. So there's opportunity for him to go out and score 10 fantasy points as a cheap tight end, and that's killer with the way tight end has looked this season.
Chuba Hubbard, not a lot of him this week. Little surprised, but I think Sermon's just eating into all of that. Not a lot of Henry. He's expensive. So
Henry's going to end up being more popular than we're projecting this week.
Definitely. What do you think he's going to be, like 18%?
Yeah, probably closer to 20.
Yeah, me too. The two pay-up options we're going with are where we've got, 30+%, Jordan Mason and Kyren Williams. And you know why I don't hate it? That's just such guaranteed volume that I can live with the results. It's such guaranteed volume for Kyren. He's the only thing functioning in that offense. And then Jordan Mason is just like really in a spot as a 7.5 point favorite. While I like Arizona in this game as a 7.5 point dog, it still should be a semi-favorable, at least neutral game script where you're getting around 20 touches. And he's running more routes lately and getting a little bit more involved in the passing game, which is really helpful.
Yeah. Oh, because somebody brought it up in the chat. Somebody who were building some lineups with him in on Wednesday when we were doing the single lineup sim show that I don't like nearly as much, but it's news based. Ramondre Stevenson was projecting really well for us a couple of days ago. And then the report came out where Gerard Mayo, the Patriots coach, he had said that maybe they'll consider starting Antonio Gibson. He was very non-committal on Stevenson being the running back this week. So that makes it really hard to have any kind of real confidence in Stevenson or even in Gibson for that matter. Like, I don't think he's guaranteed to start either. I'm okay with some exposure to each of them, but it no longer looks like the same kind of great spot against the Dolphins because who knows what that workload's going to be.
Who would you rather have, Ramondre Stevenson or Antonio Gibson with what we know right now?
Probably still Stevenson.
I would definitely still rather have Stevenson.
Obviously totally different if we find out Saturday night that Gibson's going to be the starting running back. But even if Gibson starts, I'm going to play him. And in that case, like if he starts, I definitely like him more than Stevenson. but I wouldn't be confident to go play like 30% of Gibson or something like that, because it's not like Stevenson goes away because Gibson is starting.
In the end, Stevenson has 11 red zone carries, 3 goal line carries. Gibson has 0 red zone carries, 0 goal line carries. Stevenson has 1 end zone target, 5 red zone targets. Gibson has 0 of either. Okay, let me provide a little bit of a nuanced take here, Greg. Stevenson fumbled, in that game, and then still came back out and was still getting, he didn't even get benched.
There's another part of this that's funny too. I wish I could reference who it was that had posted this online. So over the last, it's like 5 years, Stevenson has the second highest fumble rate of any running back in the NFL. Do you know who has the highest fumble rate?
Highest fumble rate over the last how many years?
5 years.
Hold on, give me a second.
If you think about it, you'll figure it out. When you hear the answer, you'll be like, oh, of course.
What were you going to say? It's not Antonio Gibson.
It is Antonio Gibson.
Okay. Yeah. I had to think about that. I was like, oh, I see where you're leading me here.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like, it's like,
real?
all right, you're taking him out because of fumble issues. You're putting in the only guy who's had a higher fumble rate over the course of his career of the players who are in the NFL right now. So it's like Gibson's going to go in. That Gibson, it's the Patriots and their shitty offense this year. Gibson's inevitably going to end up like fumbling on the first drive if he starts over Stevenson because Stevenson can't play because of fumble issues.
I'll tell you what, I think if this spooks everybody off, then I would like to get to more. I would like to be over the field on Stevenson. If this spooks people and we're seeing that, now he's projecting for way less ownership, Greg, as a home favorite, Patriots favorite against Miami. Like let's say Steven's ownership by the time we get to Sunday, with these reports spooking people, is around 5%. You don't think you'd want to be around like 15% on Stevenson in this matchup?
Yeah, with the caveat being that if other value opens up at running back, I might be less inclined to get to Stevenson.
Okay. 6K is still pretty cheap in this spot.
Yep.
Really is. Oh, guys, one thing before we move on. I love doing this show because it shows us where we're at. Bet365 yesterday. I hope you guys had taken advantage of this if you're in any of the states available to you. So entails every Thursday, because Bet365 does the promo where you get $10 in bonus bets for every touchdown scored. And it's not like Draft or FanDuel with the home runs where it's $5 for every home run in the game and it's maxed out at $5. They don't max it out. So they might after yesterday.
Yeah.
So if you bet a cumulative $50 on a parlay, same game parlay, it could be 1 for 50, it could be 5 for 10 each, and opt into it, you get $10 per every touchdown score. The coolest part is that it's a 3+ leg parlay, but it's minimum odds of even money at plus 100. So I go and I made like a plus 125 yesterday, Greg. I hit that $50 bet, right? So there's like a $60-some profit there. And then on top of it, got $70 in bonus bets. $70 in bonus bets because there were 7 touchdowns scored in that game. So a $50 bet turns into a $120 profit plus the $200. Don't let me bury the lead here, friends. $200 in bonus bets when you sign up and deposit 10 and bet $5. That's it. So links in the description and in the chat. If you use that, you can instantly verify yourself in like a minute. Deposit 10, bet 5, whatever you want. If you bet a live in-game at bat in baseball, the moment that at bat is over, you have 200 in bonus bets. And the promos that they're doing for football right now are fantastic. So if you're not on Bet365 and you're in any of the states, it's like 12 states now where it's available, or just physically located at the time in one of those states. Take advantage of this because you're leaving a ton of money on the table. Got to be 21 years or older to gamble. If you have a gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But aside from that, what are you doing? All right, let's talk about receivers here. Who have you looked at this already?
Wide receivers. I haven't looked as much at wide receiver as I have at some of the other positions. So I definitely running back caught my interest, but I haven't looked too much at wideouts this week.
Okay. I'm not surprised that Jordan Whittington, again, real dearth of value on this slate. Not a lot of good receiver value, not a lot of good running back value. Tight end is tight end. Do me a favor, Jacob. I don't want to live in suspense over here. Let's see if Tucker Kraft is the highest owned tight end this week. No, third. I thought he would be at that price. Okay. Anyway, are you shocked that Whittington's that we're getting that much exposure there?
No, I mean the Rams have nobody to throw to right now. Puka Nacua is out. You've also got Cooper Kupp out, and then Stafford is still like individually. Stafford is still playing well. He's got nothing around him, but individually, he's still a very capable quarterback. Whittington is running routes on just about every single drop back. He's on the field constantly. He's now the wide receiver 1 for the Rams. And we've seen this year over year. Whoever is the wide receiver 1 for Matt Stafford ends up being a pretty good fantasy option, no matter who that wide receiver is. So, I mean, Jordan Whittington, he is just way underpriced at $4,600. Actually, I have more confidence in him than I do in Trey Sermon.
Let me think through this. Yes. The answer is yes, you are correct.
And he's way cheaper. He's $1,100 less expensive.
No, you're right. Look, they're going to run 3 receiver sets on like 100, not 100, but on a lot of snaps. If it's anything like last week where Tyler Johnson only played 10 snaps, DeMarcus Robinson, 85%, Tutu Atwell, 90%, Jordan Whittington, 97% of snaps following the week where he played 38% and Tyler Johnson played 50%. So if we assume that that's the case, and I don't want to bank too heavily on a 1-game sample, Greg, but the reason that I'm willing to put some weight into this is because Whittington didn't just play those snaps, but he led the team in targets.
Yeah. Yeah, he's to me the best overall value play on the slate by a pretty wide margin. And it's not to say I don't think Trey Sermon is a good value play. We made a case for him. I like Trey Sermon as a value option at running back. I think I might have misspoke for and called Trey Sermon the best points per dollar play on the slate. I meant at running back. Overall, though, Jordan Whittington is the guy that I do want to have the most exposure to. I mean, you look at last week, 6 receptions on 8 targets, 62 yards. And now you've got this spot this week where they're going up against Green Bay. It should be a shootout, should be a fairly high-scoring game. I think the Rams are going to have to be throwing the ball as well. So I really like Whittington at 4,600.
So do I. No reason not to. Nico, no surprise. Robinson, because we've got neighbors projected out now.
Yeah.
So Wan'Dale Robinson looks pretty good. Do you like him this week just on as a volume play?
I mean, I don't know how you don't. The odds of him having a super efficient game is not all that likely, but who gives a shit for DraftKings scoring? He might have 12 catches for 15 yards and have himself a decent PPR game.
You're right. It's pretty unavoidable. And I don't love it. What I'm saying is I don't love a guy that's like, 6 yards per reception, but who else are they going to in a spot like this?
So I do have a little bit of what I think is a potential sneaky target from the Giants, and that is Darius Slayton, just because he has been on the team for a while. He is somewhat of a rapport with Daniel Jones, and he has been the 3rd wide receiver this year. When you consider that Daniel Jones has only thrown the ball basically to 2 guys, Wan'Dale Robinson, Malik Neighbors, I do wonder if now you just see Wan'Dale Robinson move into the Malik Neighbors role, and then Darius Slayton steps up into the Wan'Dale Robinson role, just talking about from a target share perspective. I just can't imagine that 100% of the targets go to Wan'Dale Robinson. Somebody else has to be taking targets. Robinson already had a really substantial role, and I do think Slayton could end up being that really contrarian option.
That's a good call. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, you're not going to have Wan'Dale. You're talking strictly from a target share standpoint. You're not from like where he's lining up and the right.
Yeah, just talking about role in the offense, how often those guys are being looked for, and then I mean also if you look at the game the Giants played last week, Slayton did end up with, what was it? 5 targets. Yeah, you look at, here's the target breakdown for the Giants last week against the Cowboys. 15 for Neighbors, 14 for Robinson, 5 for Slayton. Nobody else had more than 1 target. So to me, Slayton's pretty clearly the next man up. I would not be surprised if he draws double-digit targets.
Yeah. Double-digit, huh? You might be right. Like, they have to go somewhere.
There's 7 touchdown underdogs. The Giants also can't run the football for shit. They averaged 1.1 yard per carry last week. Their longest run of the game was 5 yards.
And Devin Singletary might not play.
So you're in a scenario where they're touchdown underdogs. Singletary might be out. They haven't trusted Tyrone Tracy or Eric Gray this year. Neighbors is also out. The Giants, it seems like they have to throw the football. Wan'Dale Robinson can't get all of the targets. I think there's an opportunity here the field is missing out on.
I think the upside here is significant. Honestly, Wan'Dale Robinson lines up in the slot 80% of the time. And then you've got Slayton out wide almost 80% of the time, 77.6%. Malik Neighbors, 76.1%. That is the guy that, like, he is not Malik Neighbors at all. But if you need somebody there, Slayton is going to be the answer. Obviously, Jalen Hyatt's another one of those guys who's going to be outside, but you can't trust him. You can't trust him. $3,900 Slayton might be let me put it to you this way, not the best value play on the slate, like that's Whittington, but the lowest you can go feeling remotely comfortable at 3,900.
Yeah, he's projected for what, like 4% ownership?
He can't be getting much at all. Where can we go to projections, Jacob, over on the left side, top left? Just type Slayton in there. 6%. Would you boost him?
Yes. Yeah, I would probably even change his projection.
That's what I was. Yeah, to what? Like, if you put Slayton at 10.
Yeah, I probably just gotta give him like 2 extra fantasy points, put him like 2.87, and then I bet when we rerun everything, he'd probably show up in like 15, like 30% of lineups or something.
You might be right at 3,900. You said 10.87.
Yeah,
he'd probably show up in a lot.
Yeah.
All right, head back to exposures for a second. And of course, you guys ever want to use these tools, simplest way to find them and find the subscription that you want. Not the subscription that's like in one of the 80 links down there. There's one link now. Join Stokastic NFL. You'll see it right there. Jacob can throw it in the chat as well. You click that and you see what it is, weekly or monthly, every single package. You can toggle on either one, depending on the type of player that you are. See all those checks? See those checks boxes? That shows you all of the tools that are included. And it's funny because you look at the core and the max and go, wow, big difference in price. But literally the only difference between those is that the contest generator and the pre-contest sims, the sims tool that we're using here, can run up to 10,000 with the max package and 1,000 with this one. So if you're a single entry player, you're looking for the single lineup simulator, that's in the light package, it's in the core package. You get my point. So shop around before you dive in. This is the simplest way for you to see, okay, here are the spots that I want to use. Here are the tools that I want to use. I don't need this, or I want all of it. That's the best place to do it right there on that link. It's the join page. It'll get you everything you're looking for. All right. And of course, this tool right here is just going to take you a very long way. No doubt about it. Same with the single lineups.
One quick thing I wanted to show to people, if you go to the lineups tab, Jacob. So people are saying that, hey, maybe you're not comfortable with a lot of Trey Sermon. You want to differentiate your lineups. We do have a new feature in here now. If you go to the quick favorite tab on the right, Jacob, see where it says uniques? You can now set a certain amount of uniques to your lineup. So it'll make it so that you will have to have a certain number of players differed amongst each lineups. If you put that at, say, 6, and now refavorite the top 150, this is going to pull a lot of other lineups that don't have Trey Sermon in them that still have a high projected sim ROI. So if you go to exposures now, this is going to lower the ownership or exposure we have to Trey Sermon significantly.
What would you feel comfortable making as your uniques in a slate like this?
Yeah, so I generally am like pretty cool just playing what the Sims give me. But honestly, like this, where there's a guy in Trey Sermon who I really like as a value play, but I don't want him in 80% of my lineups. I'd probably set it to like 4 or 5 uniques, at least so my Trey Sermon lineups are a little bit differentiated. And then it would also just flatten out some of the exposures amongst some of those guys. Like if somebody's overwhelmingly projected way better than everybody else and you set it to a high number of uniques, they're still going to show up in a good amount of lineups. But I do think this is a good way to flatten out exposures to value options who are more like the Trey Sermon value options as opposed to like the Jordan Mason week 1 value option.
I love that. Yeah. Jacob, can you go back to that and let's just try 4 uniques, Greg, and see what it looks like.
Yeah. It'd be a little bit, go 4. Yeah, it'd probably be like 50% Trey Sermon now or something. Yeah, 60.
Maybe 5 is the sweet spot there. Try that, because then I want to try something real quick before we get out of here. So we'll try 5 uniques. What do you think that brings into like 40, 45 probably?
Yeah, something like that.
49. All right. Does our quarterback exposure change, Jacob? If you go to exposure, does our quarterback exposure change?
A little. Oh, yeah. It took Brock Purdy got flattened out. So
yeah.
What that'll also do, if you have a lot of stacks of an individual quarterback and it's the same players in all of those lineups, it'll differentiate the stacks because, you can only have so many lineups that are different if it's the same QB +2 or QB +3 stacks.
It brought Deshaun down. And actually, you say it flattened out Purdy. It flattened out quarterback entirely. Yeah. Like I look at that quarterback exposure and go, hey, that looks kind of nice.
Yeah, I like this new feature. I've been playing around with it a little bit.
It is really nice. Yeah. Now, the reason I asked you what you're comfortable with is because, 1 unique isn't going to make a big difference. You're just going to still get the top guys jammed. But yeah, so if you're doing it, if you're using it, you're thinking like 4 or 5. Do you think it's slate dependent too? Because I would say absolutely based on if someone's mega chalk and you're just getting jammed down your throat like 2 guys or 3 guys. Oh God. 2 or 3 fantasy players.
What do you plan this weekend? So the other part of this too is that on a slate that has just 10 games as opposed to 12, where you have somebody like Trey Sermon that's showing up a lot as a value option, it's going to make it so that the lineups are more condensed and they're more similar on a 10-game slate compared to like 12, 13, 14 games.
Head back to wide receiver one more time, Jacob. All right. So
didn't really impact Whittington's exposure.
No, not a lot. Deontay Johnson, Jaden Reed. I like Jaden Reed a lot this week. Wicks. Yeah, Dontavian Wicks. Okay, so that looks good.
Yeah, there's 3 really good options to pair Jordan Love with. You're seeing 2 of them right here. Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, and the other one being Tucker Kraft. I think all 3 of those are really good pass catching options. And then I like Jordan Love at QB as well. But yeah, rotating those 3 pass catching options with him, I think makes a whole lot of sense. Christian Watson, he's expected to be out for a little while here. And yeah, you just look at where the targets are going to end up going. And Jaden Reed clearly is going to be the number 1 guy. But unlike, say, like the Trey Sermon situation, these guys have not been priced up for the scenario. Jaden Reed's only $6,500, and he's been a fantasy stud dating back to the playoffs last year. Tucker Kraft is still cheap. Dontavian Wicks is an affordable price. So Green Bay points per dollar, one of the top stacks of the week.
Can you scroll down a little bit? Really flat. Did we add, or are we adding, to see how many unique players we have in our lineups? I felt like we were going to, I felt like I read that Brian had that, but maybe not.
Well, that's what You mean
No. I mean, like, what is your pool of players?
Oh, got you. Yeah, so it's not in the pool. It's just in the Sims.
No. I'm saying of your receivers, how many receivers are in your 150 lineups? You see what I'm saying?
Oh, got you.
But no, I don't believe we have that.
No, what you could do that I think what it is that you had read is in the ROI boost. Now you could sort it by position as opposed to all the players being grouped together. So if you click on the ROI boost, Jacob, instead of it being all of the players listed there, it's now sortable by position. So it's a little bit easier to find all the different players and go through and do boosts by position.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's take a look at tight ends. Well, that is interesting. So Kittle, Kraft, and Parkinson are just getting, what is that, 53% or so? No,
Yeah.
sorry, 60. Yeah, 53% of exposure at tight end.
Yeah, we've got more than half our lineups have those three guys. There's some other guys that pop up as well. But I mean, like, I don't like George Kittle quite as much as our data and projections, but I feel pretty strongly that Colby Parkinson and Tucker Kraft, with all the information we have on Friday morning, are the two best tight end options. If you're going to pay up, I think Kittle's the best pay up tight end. But overall, Parkinson at $3,700 and how banged up the Rams are with pass catchers, he makes sense. And then Tucker Kraft, I mean, no Musgrave expected to play this week, no Christian Watson. I really think we're going to see Green Bay targets just going to three guys for the most part.
Three?
The bulk of the targets, yeah, to Tucker Kraft, to Dontavian Wicks, to Jaden Reed.
Not Romeo Doubs?
I mean, he's going to draw some, but like, what has his target share been this year?
Like,
he did get 8 targets last week. So yeah, he's been more. He only had 2 the week before, 3 the week before.
Well, that doesn't count though, right? Because it was Malik Willis.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess I'd add Dobbs into the mix too. I overlooked him a little bit.
What are the receiving props on these guys?
I did bet Tucker Kraft, and I'd posted this.
I bet the over 3.5 receptions as well.
Yeah, I bet him over 3.5. The number was like plus 126.
Yeah, look at it now.
Let's see, receptions. Yeah, now it's 3.5 minus 113. So you got Jaden Reed is 4.5 juice towards the over. Dontavian Wicks is 3.5 juice towards the over. Tucker Kraft is 3.5 now. There aren't any props up for Romeo Doubs though.
Maybe because he didn't practice, but it was okay. How about yardage props? 46.5 for Romeo Doubs, 50.5 for Wicks, 36.5 for Kraft, and 65.5 for Jaden Reed. So, yeah, Dobbs is behind Wicks, but not by a ton, and 10 ahead of Tucker Kraft.
Also, reading some of the coach speak, I'm not sure Dobbs is going to play this week.
Because of this personal stuff?
Yeah, he's away from the team, and Matt LaFleur asked if he would practice Friday. He said that he hopes so. And then when asked if he's going to play on Sunday, he said, "We don't know. We're just taking it one day at a time." I don't know he's going to play.
Well, if he doesn't end up playing, then I think you're going to end up getting a lot of Green Bay. I think we get a lot more. Bo Melton would come in and get some work, maybe Malik Heath, but those guys aren't like significant contributors. I think it would be Reed Wicks and Tucker Kraft. They start to look good. They already look good.
I hope Tucker Kraft ends up being the guy, just because I want to play a lot of him at tight end, and the tight end position is just so hard to fill this year. It's so many guys who have just been inconsistent or just have outright disappeared, like your Mark Andrews type characters. But then some of these other guys too, it's like your pay up options are George Kittle, who like, all right, I guess he's the best overall pay up option at tight end, but he seemingly at this point in his career leaves every other game early with an injury at some point.
Yeah, seriously.
I was starting to think like, oh, Brock Bowers is a real consistent role with the Raiders. And then in addition to that, there was no Devontae Adams. He didn't get involved at all in the offense last week. Dalton Kincaid, he's also had games where he's been completely uninvolved. So I'm just much more apt to punt at the tight end position, because if the players that I am playing the heaviest at tight end fail, at least it doesn't kill me if they're inexpensive. Whereas it just, the entire position's been a crapshoot this year.
At the very least, Brock Bowers is interesting, because if you take Devontae Adams out of this, right, and then you have, say, Patrick Surtain spending a decent amount of time on Jacoby Myers, or hell, even Trey Tucker for that matter. I don't think this ends up being like a shadow situation. Might actually open a lot up for Brock Bowers. The Broncos haven't allowed much to the tight end position this year, but that's also because you face Seattle, Pittsburgh, Tampa, and then the Jets in that rain game. Like, you haven't faced any quality tight ends.
Yeah, I mean, the other reasons that most teams probably haven't given up much to tight ends here, because no tight ends have done anything this season.
That's right. Right. I mean, they've allowed 137 yards and a touchdown, but they haven't faced anybody. Kansas City's been carved up by tight ends, but also Isaiah Likely went nuclear on them.
Yeah, I'd be wondering, of the yardage they've given up to tight ends, how much of it was like 50% of it to Likely.
Well, who did they face? Because Pitts had 59 against them, I believe. They faced, so Likely had a big game. They faced Cincinnati. Did Gesicki have a big game against them?
I don't think so. Let's see. So they've played.
Yeah, 7 for 91.
Okay. So they've played
and then the Chargers.
Ravens.
That just doesn't even count.
Although with that said, the game against the Bengals was also the one where there was no T. Higgins. They played the Falcons and they played the Chargers last week.
Right. They've been carved up by tight end. But again, yes, there was no T. Higgins. All I'm saying is this might actually be a spot for Brock Bowers. Could be.
At 5% ownership, I don't mind taking chances on him at all. Like, I don't think George Kittle, who's 15% owned to the 5% on Brock Bowers, if you play the slate out a bunch of times, I don't think Kittle outscores him 3-1 overall.
Neither do I. Anything else before we get out of here? I think we now have a good grasp on what this looks like.
Yeah, just one thing. If you guys are interested at all in playing NHL DFS, NHL season starts today. It's kind of a crappy one-game slate, but next week we're going to have full NHL slates, and the contests, at least for the first few weeks, are pretty significant for NHL. If you sign up for our NHL package, there's a link down below in the YouTube description box. Just $1 for 5-day package. Promo code's NHL24. It's already loaded into that link, but if you're at all interested in NHL, it's just $1 to come check out the projections and ownership we have for NHL. So promo code NHL24, numbers 24.
When does the season start?
Today.
The regular season starts today?
First, it's only one game. It's only a one-game slate. There's a one-game slate today, a one-game slate tomorrow. But Tuesday, there's a full slate. And DraftKings' prize pool up, it's $50,000 to first for the Tuesday slate. So, if you guys want to wait until there's full slates, then don't sign up today. You can wait until Monday or Tuesday. But yeah, Tuesdays are going to be real NHL contests.
Awesome. $1. NFL. Don't even forget about the promo. It'll auto load for you. If you want to just click the link. That's the simplest way to do it. So anyway, we'll go. The link's not in there. So I guess use NFL 20 or NHL 24.
Yeah. Go plug in NHL 24.
Appreciate you guys as always. Hopefully this was helpful. It's helpful for me. We will see you guys back here. What, Sunday? Yeah, Sunday. We'll get it done. 10-game slate. And guys, if you're coming on Sunday and you have time, Showdown. Who's on the show? Because we're doing the international game Showdown live before lock, heading into the regularly scheduled programming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Josh is going to be doing, instead of Josh doing the Pick'em show Sunday morning, he's just going to be doing the Showdown slate and breaking that down instead. And we were talking about he's going to build lineups in the single lineup sims. He'll answer any questions you guys have. So yeah, Sunday morning, if you guys are looking for coverage of the showdown slate, we're going to be covering it on the big live before lock block.
Yep. Same video, just right before that. Follow Greg at Ehrenberg DFS. I'm at Lafayette _D on Twitter, and we'll see you guys back here for the next one. Peace.